Let's not kid ourselves here. Elton John is a legend among legends as far as musicians go, and there are very few people out there who haven't been affected by his music in one way or another. But after more than 30 studio albums to his name, does the most unashamedly flamboyant man in pop music history really have anything left to say in his sunset years? Guys, girls, and non-binary pals, my name is Ian, this is Rhyme Signatures, and we are once again opening the lid on the best new releases in flamboyant pop? I adore Elton John. I wholeheartedly love this man and everything he's done for contemporary music. How many artists can say they've been recording across 7 decades, sold more than 300 million records, hold the rare and coveted title of an EGOT, raised over $600 million for charity via the Elton John AIDS Foundation, and given countless gay men like myself the confidence to believe in ourselves and be the truest version of who we are without fear of judgment or reprisal. It also helps that he's responsible for some of the greatest albums of all time, some of the catchiest and most enduring singles ever, as well as being a consummate talent behind the piano, the likes of which we rarely see anymore in the popular music landscape. So, yeah, I'm a fan, and I'd honestly been giving up hope that I'd ever get to talk about a brand new Elton John album on this channel. And it also gives me the perfect excuse to talk about my 5 favourite records of his towards the end of the video, so do make sure you stick around for that. Enter Brandi Carlile stage left though, as for as much as this is Elton's album, with all of his usual hallmarks written into the blood, sweat and tears that forged it, it is every bit her album as well, making for a fascinating duology of a record that feels like a homecoming shared by 2 artists who've crafted something honestly kind of brilliant between the pair of them. This is not a traditional Elton John album from any of his eras. This feels like the final send-off to a career that's been seeing the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Right, so, hands up here who listened to Elton's 1970s albums? Okay, cool, most of you, excellent, great. I'm sure you're all familiar with records like Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Caribou, Madman Across the Water, Honky Chateau, and all those other great legendary LPs. But how many of you suffered through the 1980s with absolute garbage offerings like Jump Up, Breaking Hearts, Ice on Fire, Leather Jackets, and Red Strikes Back? Yeah, not as many of you, didn't think so. Now there is a good reason why Elton is considered one of the greatest recording artists of all time, but the middle career slop that started with Victim of Love and only really tentatively ended with 1995's Made in England is certainly not why we attribute this title to him. No, those 1970s records were just that good. To be able to wash away the horrid taste of Elton's most creatively bankrupt era as well as they did, and still have him to be considered one of the greatest of all time, speaks as testament to how good they were. Between Bernie Taupin's deep and often poignant lyrics and Elton's absolutely stunning instrumental and songwriting virtuosity, when Elton John was at his best, he was at the all-time best. So where does that leave us now? So prior to this album coming out, we had the extremely hit-and-miss lockdown sessions, which saw him collaborating with a bunch of more contemporary artists, remixing some of his classic songs into more accessible, sometimes brilliant, sometimes baffling experiments. Cold Heart with Dua Lipa was a huge smash hit single. It got a lot of radio time. But for me, the standout track was Simple Things with Brandi Carlile, which brings us neatly to Who Believes in Angels. Now this album was recorded over a short and sharp session of just 20 days and resulting in 10 songs. Now that kind of recording environment is very new to Elton, with him often being taken away from the steering wheel, and what we've been given is neither an Elton John album featuring Brandi Carlile or vice versa. This is a true collaboration, and what we've ended up with is a delightfully varied slice of some very personal, very affecting, and often extremely catchy and interesting songs. Take the lead title song single with its big key changes, swirling chorus and excellent interplay between musicianship and vocal performances. Frankly, it's fantastic and one of the most enjoyable songs that Elton's worked on in years. But it's the early parts of this album that landed so well for me. The opening track of The Rose of Laura Nero invokes memories of the classic Funeral for a Friend, Love Lies Bleeding, and it caught me completely off guard. I was not expecting this level of musical fidelity from Elton at this point in his career. This features lyrics that feel taken right out of the mid-1970s and a sense of exploration in sound that we haven't heard in over 40 years. This made me pay attention. If ever there was a song to convince you that Elton and Brandi mean business, then this is the one. Other highlights include the powerful and catchy LGBTQIA+ anthem of Swing for the Fences, with some incredible lead vocals from Brandi, who is embracing that confident country and western singer attitude that makes her own solo work so enticing. But it's using it alongside this molasses-smooth Elton, which makes for a combination feeling like a delicate whipped cream mixed atop a dense sugary trifle. Okay, so let's just take a moment here to discuss Elton's vocals. Now, I know he was the subject of some ridicule over the COVID lockdowns with some unfortunate live performances which didn't really catch him at his best. But then along came the Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour and a legendary performance headlining Glastonbury Festival, and I can confidently say on this album, Elton sounds magnificent. He is fully embracing his altered register, leaning into what he's capable of, and the end result is like a wise old grandfather imparting his worldly knowledge onto you, the listener. The closing track of When This Old World Is Done With Me is absolutely heartbreaking, serving as a clear self-eulogy from a man who's been suffering from some complicated medical problems of late, and you can feel the emotional resonance of every single line. Now, despite the emotions being worn on his sleeve in this performance, Elton feels like he is saying a firm and confident farewell. If this is his swan song, then what a note to bow out on. But Brandi gets her time to shine just as much as Elton does, with fifth track You Without Me showcasing a kind of painful vulnerability against a unique and intimate guitar sound. It's an absolutely gorgeous ballad. It's the kind of music you just want to put on while you're out in the wilderness, surrounded by your own thoughts and feelings, with nothing but nature to keep you company. I honestly get chills every time I hear it, and it is an easy highlight on the album. Okay, so I think my biggest problem with Who Believes in Angels is that it is a very front-loaded album. We have banger after banger up until the title track, and then we have this three-run song of The Riverman, A Little Light, and Someone to Belong To. And I don't know, they just don't hit anywhere near as hard as the songs that preceded them did. Now, I am not insinuating that these songs are bad. They kind of aren't. They're pretty good. They're just competent though, and following up from a sequence of some of the most creative tracks in Elton's career in over 40 years, it just makes them look substandard in comparison. You know, I look at the names of each of those first 6 songs, and I can hear the hooks, I can nod my head to the melodies and choruses, and I can remember a good 80% or so of the music without even thinking too much about it. But that little trio towards the end, even after a good 7 or 8 listens, I'm struggling to remember which songs they were. Now, look, I know not every album can be Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy, sure, but it is a little disappointing to be given some of Elton's best music in so long, only for a short run of tracks to kind of kill the forward momentum a bit towards the end of the album. The record does at least end on a high note with the previously mentioned When This Old World Is Done With Me, but you could argue that both it and You Without Me are tonally inconsistent with the rest of the album. Now, a lot of the songs on here are a high energy, up-tempo, you know, they're designed to get your toes tapping. Little Richard's Bible is a great example of this, so it can sometimes feel that these ballads put the brakes on maybe a little bit too hard, and they do feel a little bit at odds with the overall mood of the record. I digress though, this is still a very fine collection of songs, and certainly more than I was ever expecting to get at this point in Elton's career. This may very well be the last time we see his name and Bernie Taupin's name on the same album credits, which is upsetting, yes, but what a record to call your last if it is. So, what else can I possibly say about Elton John and Brandi Carlile's Who Believes in Angels? I unashamedly love this man, and I'm fast becoming a big fan of Brandi's too. I've gone on to binge her discography since this album, and I can confidently call her a beautiful talent whose music I have been thoroughly enjoying. This combination of the pair of them wasn't something I was expecting, but I'm extremely grateful it exists. The chemistry the two of them share here is incredibly natural, the timbre of their voices complements each other wonderfully, and Brandi's guitars against Elton's piano is as complementary to each other as orange is to chocolate. No, it's not a perfect album, no, but I think this is about as good of a record as we could have ever hoped for. In honesty, I would call this the strongest Elton's been since Blue Moves back in 1976, and you can quote me on that. Personally, I had to get this one on physical release, but I think for general purposes I'd go with getting a digital copy. I am, after all, a bit of an Elton John superfan, so take my opinion on this one with a grain of salt, of course, but it is 100% worth checking out and spending some time with this one. Right, now for the bit of the video you've all been waiting for. It's the ranking, the 5 best Elton John records of all time as far as I'm concerned. But let's get something out of the way first. What's the worst Elton John album? It's Victim of Love. It just is. Don't do it. It's not worth the pain, I promise you. But moving on from that nonsense, let's talk about my 5 favourites. I'm going to keep this fairly brief as I don't want this video to overrun for too much, so let's get straight into it. At number 5, it's the self-titled, the sophomore album from Elton John, which actually, put him on the map. His debut album of Empty Skies it's fine, it exists, it is an album, but it was the self-titled sophomore that really showed the world what this man was capable of, obviously with Your Song belting out the gates. It's a phenomenal record with some incredible songs on it, and it really does stand the test of time. At number 4, Tumbleweed Connection. This is quite possibly the most unexpected album from Elton John if you've never really dove back into his back catalogue. When you think of Elton John, you think of big pop numbers, big hooks, kitsch, camp, yada yada yada. You would not expect what lies within this album. This has got a lot more in common with classic singer-songwriters of the 1970s than it does anything that we would come to know Elton for. There's a morose sense of introspection about this album. It's brilliant. There's not many big hit singles on this one. I think the closest thing that comes to a single from this one would have been Amarina, which you might know, you might not do. But genuinely, if you've never heard this one before, I cannot recommend it enough. It's incredibly unexpected and a brilliant slice of his history. Okay, number 3, it is Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. Now, if we were ranking album art alone, I think it's safe to say that this particular treasure of the catalogue would most assuredly be sitting top of the pile. Yeah, I love Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. I'm just going to call it Captain Fantastic because I don't want to say the entire thing of it. Whatever. It's great. Brilliant, brilliant album. It's kind of autobiographical between him and Bernie, talking a lot about how they got started and how difficult things were for them when they actually got into the music industry and all that sort of thing. So, you've got things like Gotta Get a Meal Ticket, Bit of Fingers, all that kind of thing. And then Someone Saved My Life Tonight is the big hit single off this, which is easily one of Elton's greatest works. Fantastic album, but the next 2 I think just about pip it to the post. Okay, at number 2, it's Honky Chateau. I am a huge fan of this album. I love this. Most people will talk about Honky Chateau and they will mention Rocket Man, which I think is fair, that's legit. It's an incredible career-defining moment for Elton, but I just feel every single song on this absolutely slaps. There is not a single weak moment on this. That 1-2 hit combo at the start of Honky Cat and Mellow I think is brilliant, and then at the start of the second half with Salvation, oh my god, what an absolute treat this album is. Brilliant album. Don't just listen to the singles, experience the whole thing, it's quite extraordinary. And of course, because I'm a prog rock fan, number 1 is of course Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, the big double discer. This one has got it all. My favourite Elton John song of all time in the form of Funeral for a Friend, Love Lies Bleeding, which again, prog rock fan, if you know, it's incredible. But there are so many hits on this album. Look at some of the cuts we've got here. You've got Candle in the Wind, Benny and the Jets, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. Those are big, big, big hits for Elton, but again, it's the deep cuts that really made this album sing for me. It's not Elton's only double album, because you've got Blue Moves back there as well, which also is incredible, but just not quite up to the same standard as these 5. But there is something about Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. This is the icon. This is the defining moment of his career. This is the yardstick against which all other Elton John moments will be measured. It is superb. It is brilliant. It is one of the greatest records of all time. And if you've never listened to Elton John before, you cannot do better than jumping right in at the deep end with this one. So there we have it. There are my thoughts and feelings on the top 5 Elton John albums of all time, as well as my thoughts and feelings on the brand new record. If you have listened to Who Believes in Angels, I'd love to know your thoughts and feelings on the album, so please do drop me comments down below. If you did make it this far into the video, thank you so very much indeed for watching. Please do tell all your friends about little old me, and please do consider subscribing to the channel if you've been enjoying my own particularly irreverent brand of music review and critique. But until next time guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.